Welcome to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. We interview great guests who inspire you to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Be sure you visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, just relax as you listen. You can do something else, but be ready to make an important note. And let's get started.
The title of this interview is Meet Chad Price, the fitness entrepreneur. Business is his sport. We'll be talking about entrepreneurship and fitness, health, and wellness minority Black-owned businesses. So who is Chad Price? Well, he is a veteran American entrepreneur across multiple industries. He brings an extensive knowledge of the sports industry and a wide range of experiences in all aspects of fitness and wellness entrepreneurship. That's great stuff. Welcome, Chad.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
I love entrepreneurialism. To me, entrepreneurialism, the American dream is quite subjective. Some people just want to work and be an employee, fine. But to me, entrepreneurialism is the real American dream, where a person has a unique vision, takes risk personally, and they either make it or they don't. To me, that's the epitome. I'm all about entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's definitely a shared spirit, I think, amongst all entrepreneurs when it comes to kind of the grind that it takes and the perseverance of just kind of putting everything on your back and putting your life in your hands, so to speak.
Let me tell you, right now, I'm launching an app. It's going to be a revolutionary app in personal development. I've literally been at it over 8 years. The company, I was a life coach. Now I'm the head of the technological coaching company. And we're going to launch this app called Petrozza. It's going to be a game changer for personal development. We've been at it 4.5 years with the company. Still haven't launched because we're undercapitalized. Sometimes I get so frustrated, I even get ideas of suicide, which I quickly dismiss. Because it's friggin' hard, man. It's hard, especially if you set certain parameters, but why do I persist? I wanted to quit many times because I so believed in both the vision, the product, and myself that I wouldn't say compelled to go forward, but it's like, I've got to do this. I must do this. It's worth whatever I'm risking. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's the spirit that's inside of you. There's almost like there's an ambition that you can't get rid of. So when you wake up in the morning, it's not about necessarily the money. It's about achieving that goal or that vision that you have in your head. You're trying to bring into reality.
Absolutely. I don't even have any money goals about it. I have all the numbers goals. Don't have to do with money. There's number of users. There's different mathematics, different statistics, but not money. To me, money. Yeah, I like to be rich. As a matter of fact, the more I looked at my business, and the more I saw how many zeros I could add to it, I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's great. But that's not what it's about. It's really about doing things my way. That's for me.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think it's really taking control of your own destiny. I think it's so self-fulfilling, and it gives you the ability to kind of work every day on a vision that you see the world as. So, rather than going to a 9-to-5 and kind of focusing on a company's vision or someone else's vision, you really get to create your own vision every day.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it for me is that obviously everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. What I do in my business is that, okay, what are my strengths? These are the things that I want to all put every one of them into my business, into my vision. So to me, the business is a direct reflection of me. This is me. The Proficio is my product. Auxilium is my company. That is Tony Petrozza. And if it succeeds, then Tony Petrozza is the success. If it fails, sorry to say, Tony Petrozza is the failure. And I don't say that in a negative way. I mean, accountability, take responsibility way. But all the strengths that I have, I can bring to bear in this pursuit. I love that. I don't leave anything out. I just go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's what I loved about sports is you kind of leave it all on the field. So regardless whether you win or you lose, it's, you went for it and you took your shot. In college, we used to play UT when I went to Rice in college, and I think everyone knew we weren't going to win the game, but still after the game, you have that sense of accomplishment. Even though you lost the game, you still have that sense of, leaving everything out there, trying your hardest, competing, at a high level for a team goal. I think that's what really gives you that fulfillment.
When my younger years, I was quite an athlete. I played football, I played basketball, I played baseball, and giving it all in sports is, I think, and for me, in my experience as a young person, that was where it was at. That was what it was all about, and obviously you're new to the world. I'm a young person. And of course, sports is not limited to just young people. You made a career at it. Would you just say you made a career at it? Because I know you're in business now. So
yeah, I mean, I think so. I think I definitely pulled from, my resources and my network and the experiences I had, playing competitive sports my entire life. I think I probably learned more from just the actual kind of team camaraderie and building groups of people to achieve goals. I think I really learned a lot about how to do that and how to put good teams together, what makes cohesive teams and teams that can kind of have a passion beyond just the monetary aspects of a business or whatever operation that you're trying to achieve. So I think I definitely pull from it, but I'm always trying to learn. I think that's one of the other things about me in general. I think, going to Rice and having that kind of mentality where no matter what I'm doing, I'm trying to be more proficient at it every day. So even if that's just one step at a time, 1 inch at a time, I'm trying to master whatever I'm currently in. When it came to starting my fitness company, I didn't know much about the equipment that I was starting, but I knew a lot about exercise and I knew a lot about finding people who did know a lot about the types of equipment. So really building that network of people that I can rely on, that are credible, that I can kind of pool the best resources available in the world to really bring something together for a community.
That's, of course, I relate completely. I was a life coach, and I'm creating a business, and I have this. You're looking at the next Steve Jobs, all right, Chad? My company's gonna be bigger than Apple, all right. But most of my businesses have failed, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hire people who are much smarter than me and much more proficient than me in running my business. But I play a necessary part too. Not that their parts are not necessary; they are just as necessary. But it starts with the visionary, right? It starts, and there's a certain expertise or a certain thing that I bring to the table, especially as a founder, which is necessary. Without that initial touchstone, it just doesn't happen. But and we don't have to run stuff. You delegate, you create a staff, you create a business that knows how to run itself and grow. Great, but you don't have to be that businessman. I mean, in terms of having all these business skills, certainly there's a million things to be done. You're one person, right? It's going to take a lot of people, but the thing that an entrepreneur has to bring forward is the passion, the vision. You already said these things. Some sort of expertise, so you're an athlete. Me, I'm a coach. I've created a technological coaching company, which is really, it's a novel thing per se. But the individual has to bring him or herself forward. And then if it's good enough, it'll attract, right? You can get to a certain level of prosperity where you can create the business, delegate, and hopefully it'll work itself out. And you said a couple other keywords too that resonated with me. I wrote it down: camaraderie and teamwork. I played those team sports, like I mentioned. And then I also joined the 82nd Airborne Division. I was an infantryman. It was not much different than being on a sports team. Much more dangerous, I'll tell you. Much more dangerous.
Harsher consequences.
but it's about working with a team, not all about me. Yeah, I got my part to play, and my part shouldn't be me giving 100%, but it's not all about me. It's not, and if I shine, I should shine, share the spotlight, being the one is the group. I'm one in the group, but the group is the one. That was a critical thing for me that was instilled in me, starting from my young athleticism and then later in my military. And now as I create my business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even when I was growing up, I love individual sports. I loved all sports. So growing up, I pretty much played every sport that existed, but I really love the team sport. And I really love when everyone was really motivated to achieve something. So I think, I tell people all the time, we won state when I was in high school. And I think I'm still trying to chase that rush sometimes because that team was just so well built. Like we cared so much about achieving whatever goal we put forth that we could leave everything else in life behind for that moment in time to just be super competitive in that space. And I'm always trying to build a team with that level of passion where everyone on the team is just there, fully committed, able to compete at the highest level and feel empowered and supported by the rest of their team in order to do that.
I'm a practitioner of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is a form of psychology that focuses on how people think. And we're very perceptive to the entire human. And I saw when you talked about being both an individual athlete as well as a team player athlete, how affected you were. I heard it in your voice and I saw it in your face and your body language, how much it meant to you now. And that affected me. It was great for me to see, look at this guy's authentic self, how meaningful what he's sharing with us is about, and how you bring it as your career as a businessman. That's great, bro. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like I say, I still keep in touch with everyone I play sports with now, and even some of the business partners and the network that I built is from those relationships and those kind of times that you go through with teams. And so now I'm able to build business teams, and we go through our own adversity and have our own challenges to go through that builds us. And so I have even beyond my company, I kind of have built a small network of business professionals that I work with now that I still get to compete in the very same way. It's just kind of a different playing field.
Great stuff. Let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, and we'll come right back with Chad Price, sports entrepreneur.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Proficio. When people learn something, they want to use it so it has real value. And the best teacher is experience. Visit www.proficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where Proficio will have you taking action with what you're learning immediately. You'll be closer to your goals before you even realize it.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having such an interesting conversation with Chad Price about being an entrepreneur, especially being a sports entrepreneur. And we talked about a lot of the path to becoming an entrepreneur, but let's talk about becoming an entrepreneur. What strengths can an athlete bring to entrepreneurship and startup culture?
I think it's quite a bit. I mean, I think especially if you've ever really tried to play athletics competitively, I think you understand that there's winners and losers in the world. There's winners and losers in any competition. So whenever you're trying to achieve a goal, I think you have to kind of set yourself up to basically be held accountable for how you're going about that. So if you're trying to get into sales, or you're trying to get into technology, then I think you should be comparing yourself to the best that's out there and trying to structure some type of plan to get to that level. So in sports, you're going to look at the number one teams and what they're doing in the off season and try to match those things. And I think it's no different in business. I think you start with that same mentality of really preparing yourself for the competitive playing field. And if you take that mindset, I think you just inevitably get better every day.
Absolutely. Now my new icons are all business people. So that's what I look at. I look at, what they did, not necessarily to emulate them, but to be inspired by them and to also learn from them. And especially overcoming adversity. I already mentioned the kind of difficulty that I had, because that's what I've got to give up. I've got to get through, because it ain't over until you give up. Once you give up, then it's over, but not until then.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it is, I compare it to your health and wellness journey, your fitness journey personally. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to get better. If you take one step in the right direction every day and you set your goals and you keep chipping away at them, eventually you'll get there. So in business, there's ups and downs and wins and losses, but you learn probably more from the losses than you do from the wins a lot of times, just because it's inevitable that you will see the same type of problems in the future. You'll be able to avoid them and basically get more efficient as you go along.
What are your current businesses that you're in?
I have several businesses right now. So my most notable business is Kettlebell Kings, which is the fitness company that specializes in kettlebell equipment and basically anything around the kettlebell. So we try to see ourselves as kind of like the kettlebell, let's say the ESPN of the kettlebell world as well. So
the kettlebell is a weight that's used in weightlifting, a specific kind of weight.
Yeah, it's basically a piece of fitness equipment. You can imagine it's a cannonball with a horseshoe on top or a handle on top. And, you use that weight in tons of different ways. It's a super efficient way to work out, especially for someone who has limited space or is really looking for functional fitness versus, let's say bodybuilding. But it can still be used, but it's used by, pro athletes, Olympians. It can be used for bodybuilding as well. So really we specialize in using that tool to build a community that really focuses on health and wellness. So it's about a health and wellness journey, and the kettlebell is kind of that centerpiece that brings the community together.
Now that I think about it, it may be the most diverse weight there is because of that handle. You can use it so many different ways.
So many different ways, and not to mention it, you can use it in other ways that you can't use, let's say, a dumbbell. So because the weight is distributed kind of at the bottom, it's very, very bottom heavy. It basically makes you use a lot more of your muscles to keep it in balance as you're using it. So you're going to be using a lot more momentum and flowing type movements, which translate more naturally to functionality in the real world. So, if you're lifting a shopping bag, you're not holding a strict curl or a strict bicep, you're more swinging that shopping bag like you would. And so it really trains those long chains of muscle groups to function effectively.
Yeah, that's you making custom workouts rather than, these traditional or rigid workouts with weights, or aerobics, but being more creative or using a plan from very innovative people like yourself. The idea of working out with a kettlebell, really, it's exciting. It sounds like there's so much more I can do, especially in a small space that use different muscles that standard, or conventional motions just don't get to.
Yeah, exactly. And what makes it beautiful is, the internet kind of connects us all together. So we can really build a network of people and trainers that use the kettlebell in so many different ways. So, we have people who would use the kettlebell, what you consider hard style or, more strict kettlebell usage. And then you have kettlebell sport, which is completely longevity and maximum efficiency when you're training. And then you also have fun things like kettlebell juggling, where people are flipping the kettlebell and twirling it in different ways like that. So there's so many different ways that you can use this tool. And I think the beauty in it is everyone can kind of have their own custom journey with it. It's something that, you can have. It doesn't take up much space in your home. and it's going to last longer than you. So it's one of those things that I think everybody can have kind of their own small section of kettlebells that they use as their personal tool for fitness and wellness.
Now, moving on a bit, your staff hinted to me that, of course, you have you have some diversity in your businesses. So I'll just ask the question outright. What is the business landscape like for hemp products as they're marketed to minority communities?
Sure. Yeah. So my other business is Life Grows Green, which is I would call it a lifestyle brand, and we make kind of health and wellness products right now, but more products that are plant derived, and we really want to kind of change the stigma on, especially like hemp and cannabis and things like that. So really taking whatever kinds of tinctures or salves or whatever types of products that we can develop from these plants. We want to make them as federally legal and, able to ship basically internationally and nationally. When it comes to kind of how it affects us in the hemp space, especially if you're talking about the minority community or the African-American community, it's just very hard to start these types of companies because there's no consensus on regulation, even from the terminology that's able to be used or the language that's used around certain things. It's all up for interpretation by different not only platforms that you would typically advertise on or sell on, but then also by different jurisdictions, whether that's different counties in the same state, the different states, the federal versus the state regulations. And so it's kind of just a cluster right now of different ideas. And the worst part about it is no one's really an expert in the plant itself. So you're kind of stuck going with an ever-changing landscape of people who don't really know what they're talking about, making regulations and rules around how things can work.
So there's a lot of complexity, and there could be criminal repercussions even. So it's a bit dangerous.
A little bit. I think the hemp bill, cut that down quite a bit. Obviously, there's legalization is just, the green wave is taking over. I don't think there's any way to stop the legalization of cannabis and the hemp plant completely anymore. But in the meantime, people are positioning for whether that's their own business benefits. So you have a lot of places that, you literally, there's kind of pay to play type of opportunities that are available for people, and people aren't going to give away their positions of power for free, basically. So
power is a hard thing to part with.
It is definitely a hard thing to part with. And especially when someone else, or you feel as though someone else is going to come in and take advantage of this opportunity and get rich off of it. Everyone's trying to figure out how they get their piece of it. So I think it'll all get worked out. Time is not ever a good thing for a business to be kind of waiting, but the way I'm trying to position our brand right now is to be in a position to really take advantage of the opportunity once the regulation kind of normalizes. So really kind of try to build a ground up organic brand that people can trust and follow. And as the regulations kind of come in alignment, we can expand more efficiently, put more fuel to the fire as we go.
Well, it's obviously a very pioneering field, and your business must be a pioneering one. I mean, you might be consulting with a shaman at some point in the future. This stuff is so, where do we go from here? It's so like you said, there's no experts. I guess a shaman would be as much as an expert as anyone. If you go into that, whatever.
Well, I think it's like the kettlebell world. If you looked at the kettlebell world 10 years ago when we started the brand, people would think there's no experts, but I think there are experts on the ground. They just don't really care about the publicity. They've always been in a gray to black market type of situation where they can't even really speak about their expertise as deeply as they would like to. They don't, they don't want to draw more attention to things that may be potentially legally damning. And so you find yourself in a situation where you have people who have been in these industries for 30, 40 years, but the mainstream public doesn't really know who they are. And I think that's one of the lessons I learned with the kettlebell world is you have to find these people and really be able to vet and bring these people together so you can get the most information from everybody. So I work with a team now, and I have a network of people very similar to I have in the kettlebell world, in the hemp and the cannabis space that also help me choose which direction is the right direction, not just for my company, but also for the consumer base. Because I think that's what it boils down to at the end of the day is we want to bring the highest quality product to the consumer market. And if you have that as a foundation, it makes it really hard to kind of go wrong. You know, that's always the guiding light is if the United States government or the state of Texas or the county of Austin doesn't understand how to do something, we genuinely want to already be the expert in showing them how to do it.
Very interesting. Okay, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, and we'll come right back with Chad Price.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Perphysio. Poor finances are the leading cause of stress, divorce, and general troubles. Financial managers, coaches, and consultants are great, but responsibility rests with you. There are new answers. Visit www.perphysio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can truly learn the foundational attitudes and methods of accruing wealth and staying wealthy.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having a fascinating conversation with bold entrepreneur Chad Price. Great stuff. He's really illuminating a number of facets about his fields and his businesses, the challenges and the landscape. Very interesting stuff. Very informative for the entrepreneur. My next question, you have several businesses as you just described. What type of mindset mentality do you need to have to manage multiple profitable businesses?
I think you need to really understand that building a team of good resources is kind of essential. You can't do it all by yourself. There's no way to really do that. And I think that's a mistake that you can make as an entrepreneur, whether you think you can carry all the weight by yourself, or you think you have enough time to do it all by yourself. And I think the time part is what really kind of what it boils down to is, if you're trying to manage multiple operations, each operation you could spend your entire day on one operation. So you have to have people in place that can fill in those gaps for you when you're going to be missing or when you're going to be, allocating your time elsewhere. And so right now, I think that's the biggest obstacle that I have to always overachieve is continuing to build that team and continuing to being able to fund and incentivize that team to really do whatever vision that I have or execute on all the goals that we have as a team.
Right. You got to give them incentives that work for them, that actually work for them, that we might think something incentivizes, but doesn't resonate with the person. It's not just money, there's other things too that make that really get people going. And, and I'm very fortunate, I happen to be a very lazy person. So I want to delegate everything. I don't care. The last thing I want to do is micromanage. Matter of fact, I don't want to do anything. Wake me up when later on, but, obviously everyone's got to do something. And delegation is critical, as you just talked about. Now, you talked about two businesses. Do you have just two right now? Do you have? So
I guess I would have a couple other businesses as well. So I have a consulting company as well, in which basically I consult on e-commerce, direct-to-consumer type of operations. So really anything when it comes to the virtual world or selling products online, that's kind of my area of expertise.
That's great.
Especially in the fitness space. And then I'm also getting into, and I definitely wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I have a real estate investment company also. So I'm trying to kind of learn quite a bit more about that. And I put a kind of small team together that's vetting properties, and we're trying to kind of think about how we're going to build a portfolio of real estate properties as well.
Are these all LLCs or what's their structure?
So I guess most of them are LLC. Some of them are, S corp.
Okay, very good. Now, which do you prefer personally? Do you like the corp? Do you like?
For me, honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever works best for my tax benefits. So depending when you're in the hemp space, or especially in the cannabis space, you're probably going to lean more towards a corporation to limit your tax liabilities for yourself personally, as well as kind of separate yourself, your personal liability from the company liability. So it's just a little easier without a pass-through LLC like that. But for me, I'm the type of person, when it comes to regulations, because I operate on a global scale, I find it somewhat comical, all the different regulations, because it's just a bunch of paperwork, to be honest. So
yeah. But this is an audio podcast. I'm holding up my fingers like across, like a vampire. Ugh. Ugh.
So yeah, I have an accountant that I work with. I have several different lawyers, tax accountants. Basically, I have a network of financial people that I will go and get a strategy from, and then I'll just execute whatever strategy that they say I should do.
Well, what about dealing with boards of directors? Can you just share on that? Maybe the difficulties or the things you don't like about it?
Well, it's honestly, I have some experience dealing with boards of directors, and from a sales perspective, because, I'm trying to get B2B accounts and super large accounts from, other companies. But then recently, my Kettlebell Kings company was acquired, and with that acquisition, we're working with a larger brand. So, it's a 3-year acquisition, or it's probably going to turn into a little longer deal than that. But we are working with, a brand or company that has dozens or even hundreds of brands, let's say, and we're part of that team. So now we're working with a board and a corporate structure that's a lot different than what we're used to. So I think there's pros and cons to it. Theoretically, you have more resources and more financial backing, and you can execute on a larger scale. But then you with that, you can't be as agile maybe as you'd like to be, and you can't be as let's say free spirited as you would have when it's just you, or just you and a small team. So I think it's one of those things you just have to adjust and understand it's not going to be the same if you're having to deal with a board versus 3 to 4 people that are all the final decision makers.
And you give up a lot of autonomy. I mean, you don't call the shots anymore. You gotta report, or answer or report to somebody, or at least take some instruction, or if not orders, guidance. Because now, you said you've been bought out. How's that dynamical change?
It's interesting. I mean, for me, it's one of those things where I don't ever look at things as necessarily good or bad. I think, it's just trade-offs to everything. So some things require more effort than I'd like to give. And then other things I can allow the corporate resources to take care of that maybe used to would have had to take care of. So I still see it as, I'm still the general, has to use the army that I have and the tools that I have in front of me. So if I'm, in this corporate structure, then, I need to be able to assess what's the best way for me to operate efficiently inside that structure. And if there's something I need to change, then I need to speak up and change that. And if there's something that they need me to do, I just need to, adjust my strategy to incorporate it.
Now, you're in Texas, and obviously you were an athlete. Did you study business in college or wherever?
I did. So yeah, I double majored in business and sports management.
Yeah, you seem to have quite a good grip on both. So there you go.
Yeah, my original, I think I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I did kind of take the corporate America route. So I worked in oil and gas for a little while. I worked in downtown Houston, and working there, I think, is what really made me jump in with both feet to entrepreneurship. So getting into the corporate world and realizing, like, no, this this is not going to be long term for me, or this is not where I envision myself for the next 20 years, really kind of sparked my journey.
So you went to school for it. When did you, I mean, just someone goes to school for, for business, they could either think about being an employee, probably maybe dreaming of the C-suite or whatever, probably, or becoming an entrepreneur like you did. What were your dreams like back in your college days in terms of business?
I knew I always wanted to run a very, let's say, profitable or a reputable operation. So if that was for a large company, like some huge brand, I was interested in that. But I knew I needed to have some type of team that I was kind of working with to achieve large goals. And after, like I say, working in oil and gas and kind of seeing how that corporate structure worked and what was necessary to climb there, it really just guaranteed my journey into entrepreneurship. So once I saw that, there was more politicking and different aspects of a corporate structure that you had to climb, and waiting in line, seniority, different things like that. It just wasn't the same as being able to actually go compete right now and kind of prove yourself on the entrepreneurship playing field, so to speak. I'm able to kind of skip those efforts, and if I want to get back into corporate America ever, I always can, but kind of at a different level as an entrepreneur or as a CEO versus as an employee who climbed through the ranks.
Now, okay, so you've worked in the corporate world and you're an entrepreneur now. Have people move on? Have you had businesses, your businesses that you moved on from, maybe sold or defunct?
Yeah, for sure. So once I just started opening my own businesses, it was all go for me. So there was no idea that was a bad idea. Let's do everything. So I owned a nail salon when I started my fitness company. I opened up a nail salon as well, and I shut that down right before COVID. It did well. It was a ball and chain, and it was a physical location, and obviously COVID kind of put a lot of stops on anyone with a physical location. So it was one of those things where even those journeys like that taught me so much about building communities, dealing with customers, what types of operational costs are associated with having a physical footprint versus a virtual company. So it's just, that's why I say I don't look at any kind of step in this process as a negative. I always see everything as, this is a paid education, and my customers are paying for me to learn how to do things right.
That's an excellent framing of it, Chad. Excellent framing. Let's take our final break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll come back with the unfortunate last segment with Chad Price.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Perficio. Perficio learns more about you as you make progress and then uses that information to help you even more. It is quasi-AI. Visit www.perficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can be helped by something that learns more about you, because that is the difference that makes the difference.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. This has been a fantastic conversation with Chad Price about sports and entrepreneurialism and other parts of his businesses that aren't even sports. But let's get into, I think this has been a very valuable conversation for people interested in business, especially people that have been athletes, but not just, certainly. But how do you go about starting your own business and turning ideas or products profitable? Let's go back to the genesis.
Sure. For me, it was, I look at things as kind of making commitments to myself at first, and then I start there. So for me, it was, I knew I wanted to start my own business, and I knew I wasn't completely experienced enough to know all aspects. So I wanted to put a small team together to start a business with. That started with two of my business partners. So went to my business partners and decided, let's get some serious commitments together. We all had different ideas about what companies we might want to start. We said, let's start an LLC, let's put a deposit into the LLC and really make some commitments about hard deadlines and making those decisions. So took about 6 to 8 months to kind of go through all of our ideas. And we knew we wanted to do something e-commerce. That made it a lot easier. Once we narrowed it down to kind of a final list of ideas, we decided, we're going to make a decision in the next 60 days, and we're going to spend the money that we deposited towards starting that company. A lot of it is just the initial setup and the, purchasing inventory and trying to make sure you have a good, let's say, runway for a good launch. But our experiences and backgrounds kind of set us up for that. So I'd already been in e-commerce. I'd already worked for several other entrepreneurs in my collegiate career and just seen so many kind of behind the scenes operations that I felt confident that I could at least get this started and we could grow from there. So I think that's the gist of how we got started. But if you're an entrepreneur in general and you're trying to start any idea, I really do think it's about that first step of making a commitment to yourself and really kind of building that stage for yourself to be able to commit full time to some type of operation outside of what you're used to.
So the example you gave, you collectivized, you got partners, and then you said, okay, this is then you made a decision on what field to go to, which is very interesting. So it's for you, I mean, definitely there was the sell first, but it was getting some people that that would be quality people, partners, and then have a consensus and saying, let's do this. That's great. And I think I've had a number of partners, and for the most part, they kind of suck. It's rare when you have a good partner, and I think a good partner could make or break you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the beauty in it as well. And I've always liked that part. I tell people all the time, I had, 100 teammates, let's say, when I was in college, and I didn't like them all at all. But if we all committed to the same goal, I think that's what we can build around. And in the world in general, I think we all, share 90+% of the same ideas, and we differ on the ones that we differ on. And a lot of time that it gets in the way of actually achieving things and actually making progress. So finding people who can at least put things aside and set things aside and setting up structures to still make decisions. So like for us, it was having 3 of us, which is just a voting process now. It doesn't have to be personal. It's just if we get into something where we have 2 different directions and we have to choose one, we put it up for a vote and we go in that direction. And for me, that's very similar to like football or another sport where you don't get to pass every time, you don't get to run every time, I don't get to blitz every time. It's sometimes I get my chance, and other times I have to give someone else a chance, and I like that part of it as well.
What was your position in football?
I mean, in college, I played safety, but I played football my entire life, so I pretty much played every position except quarterback. Yeah.
I was a safety too. Very good, and a cornerback. Final question, Chad. How do you use digital tools to run a modern day e-commerce business?
I mean, I would consider that kind of my area of expertise. I actually work with Google on this exact topic of using digital tools to run modern day e-commerce operations. And I think you kind of have to jump in. It's just like with any digital tool. There's so many different pieces of autonomy that are out there and available. And it's about kind of putting those pieces together and seeing which works for your operation. It's almost, we're in 2022. So the vision that we had as kids of how we could automate as many pieces of an operation and how we could basically connect as many pieces of technology that are available, it's available to do now. And I really pride myself in being able to do that, not just for myself, but I know it'll bring a better user experience for the customers and for the community that I'm trying to build. So I almost look at it as, taking every single piece of technology that's available on the internet and then trying to sort through that in a way that I can build an operation around. And, at times, I think when we were working with Google, we were using like 29 or 30 different Google tools inside the business. But to us, it just becomes like a standard. It's, we see ourselves as always trying new pieces of technology, always trying to seeing how those pieces can integrate with everything else we're doing, and really not shying away from kind of that as the experience. Because I think at the end of the day, we all see how much technology has changed our lives, and it's only accelerating.
Great stuff. Chad, this has been, I think, a very, very valuable conversation for people to listen to. You offered so much insight into entrepreneurialism. And I think that you might even get people interested in it, that word, because you made it so accessible. And I really appreciate it. Great stuff, man. You've lived a great life, man. Keep living it. And I'd like people to go to your website. I know it's chadprice.com, but you also are on social media. We're going to have a profile page on our website with all your stuff. But on social media, you have the kettlebell business. What is your tag on that?
Yeah, so you can follow me. Obviously, I have chadprice.com, real Chad Price on Instagram. And then as well, I have kettlebellkings.com, and Kettlebell Kings is on social media, huge following, a lot of fitness content, everything around the kettlebell world, as well as Life Grows Green. And that's on social media as well. And that's, you're going to find a lot of content around the hemp, around plant, around nature and natural products. Basically, we really want to try to create natural products that break that stigma of what cannabis and hemp should be used for.
It's been my pleasure to interview you, Chad. I really appreciate it. Do you have any final remarks for the audience?
No, I really appreciate all the questions today. Very, very thoughtful and insightful. So I hope it was helpful, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. And remember, everyone, we're all responsible for ourselves, and we could all use a little help. With that, thanks for listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, and thank you, Chad Price.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. Remember to visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Self-Help Coaching Podcast.